Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Yellow Room Podcast. I'm Nika Hansen, your host, and I want you all to be great. The Yellow Room is all about empowering you to unleash your full potential in every single aspect of your life. And I hope that you've received just that up until this point. If you consider yourself a part of this great Yellow Room community, be sure to do me a few favors. First, subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Secondly, if you enjoy any of the episodes that I put out or today's episode, help me to extend my reach by sharing it with a friend or two. Again, thank you for tuning in. Hello, Yellow Room family. Welcome to an all-new series for the month of March. This series is called Money Moves. Yes, Money Moves. This month, we will be talking about all things money, covering a variety of topics that I think are critically important in building wealth and money management in general. Today's special guest is Takisha Artis, a financial life coach and CPA with over 20 years in the financial industry. Her mission is to help entrepreneurs transform their limiting beliefs about wealth so that they can increase their net worth. Amen to that. She's building a community of women who are confident in their relationship with money. I am super duper excited for you all to tune into today's episode, and I hope that you find it very valuable in taking the next steps in better money management in your life. Hello, Yellow Room family. Welcome back to another episode. Well, the first episode of the Money Move series. Today we have a very special guest. Her name is Takisha Artis. I'm just hopeful and grateful for you being a part of the podcast today, and I'm hopeful that our audience will be able to have some very good takeaways that they can apply in their life around finances and money management and wealth building, all of that good stuff. But if you can briefly introduce yourself and share your background in finances, essentially your why.
Absolutely. Well, first, thank you for having me on the podcast. I'm really excited. So again, I am Takisha Artis. I am a financial life coach. What's funny is that I didn't set out to be a financial life coach. I actually have a background in accounting, so I am a CPA. And so when I first started this journey as an entrepreneur, I really just wanted to help entrepreneurs DIY their bookkeeping system. The company that I work for, I would see so many small mom and pop entrepreneurs submitting invoices, and some of them wouldn't have like the business name on it, and it's like, who is this for? So I saw this need. I'm like, how, you want me to pay you? There's no name on it. So I saw this need that I really wanted to help, because I'm like, they could get so much more business if they just changed a couple things. Right. And so as I started working with entrepreneurs, there was this connection that they wanted to do it, but they really didn't want to. Like, they didn't see the value in it. And I was curious, like, well, you got to pay taxes on this money, so you should really know how much you made. A lot of them weren't paying themselves. So I'm like, that's a really good indicator of you tracking your money to see why you can't pay yourself. So I was just kind of curious, like, why didn't they value this service? And as I started working with more of them, I realized that how they ran their business was really how they ran their personal finances. And so we sometimes avoid that money subject. We don't want to look at it until we have to, or we think it's, terrible, so we want to avoid it. And so I kind of, in figuring that out, I started to realize that it was money mindset, but I didn't actually know what that even meant. And so I started to do a lot of research and take a lot of classes. And then that kind of led me into more of the financial psychology, the behavior, why we do these things. Like, most people know to save and invest and to manage their money, but there's this big resistance around actually doing it. And so I wanted to kind of get to the bottom of why we do those things. And that kind of led me into this financial life coach area. And so I want to do it because I feel like women particularly, we have a lot of spending power. We just don't know that. And women are the highest group of entrepreneurs that are starting business. So we're making more money, but unfortunately we aren't keeping a lot of what we make. We're still in that cycle of, overspending and, still amassing a lot of debt. So I wanted to, for, our community, really help get to the bottom of, let's create more, not just women entrepreneurs, but those women entrepreneurs who are making millions as well.
Yeah, wow. So as a life coach, financial life coach, what are some of the common limiting beliefs that you've seen about money and wealth?
That it doesn't apply to them, that there's this thing where everyone has a different measure of what wealth is. Mm-hmm. And to some people, wealth means, the Maserati with, a mega mansion with a boat tied in the back. To other people, it's more of a modest home and a luxury car. So even, there still are other people who are like, I just want to have enough where I don't have to worry about money. But I think sometimes we get confused in knowing what we want and what society expects of us. And so we don't really have a clear vision of what we really define wealth as. And so when you aren't clear in your vision, sometimes society and others, their visions then become yours, even though you don't value those things. So I think the first one is just not knowing that it's possible. Because we want to always look at, well, if I'm wealthy, how would that happen? And the how isn't important. It's the belief that you can. The why and the how will kind of come to you as you start to believe that you can have those things. But sometimes we just get stuck on believing that it's not for us. I think another one is, as entrepreneurs, sometimes we feel like we want to serve, we want to help the world. And in doing that, because it's so easy for us and it's so our passion, that we don't want to put a price tag on it. And then sometimes when you don't put an appropriate price tag on it, the server is now suffering because they can't live the lifestyle that they want because they're always in service mode. And so then they feel like, well, I'm doing this, but they have this feeling of resentment because they're doing all of this, they're exhausted, they're helping their clients make more money, and oftentimes, but they aren't. But that's because they aren't valuing what they do and understanding that this isn't a non-for-profit, this is an actual business, and it's okay to serve and sell. I get that a lot, and not being open to the idea that what you can put a nice price tag on. Right. Sometimes we have this, to make money, you have to go to school and get this job. But as entrepreneurs, we're kind of reframing that whole narrative. And sometimes that programming of go to school and get a good job kind of goes into conflict with making money over the internet, or, doing things that you love, or it being unconventional. So sometimes those beliefs kind of clash with what you've been always told. And sometimes that makes it hard for entrepreneurs to kind of wrap their head around, like, this is kind of easy. I'm doing what I love. I'm making money from this. And them being okay with it and not kind of sabotaging themselves along the way.
Wow. Wow. I like that you brought up the whole idea of making sales and serving, because I think a lot of people, especially like beginning entrepreneurs, they're oftentimes afraid of they know their worth, but they're afraid of associating a price tag with it, right? So they may say, let's take a blogger, for instance. They may say, I'm a great writer, I have a great audience, but I feel bad for like monetizing. I don't know how bloggers monetize, but I know some that they make a lot of money. I don't know exactly how, but so they may say, well, for the first year or two, so that I can grow my platform or whatever, I'm going to not monetize anything or whatever. But I just feel like in the long run, they end up hurting themselves, right? Because it's just like, you might get to a point where you have, like, let's say, again, I don't know I don't know about blogging much. I don't even know why I use this example. But let's say if you get to an audience platform of like 10,000, right? You can like make money in like when you have less people. Sometimes I get both sides. I get what people are saying. Okay, I want the expertise, I want the experience, but it's like, if you really know deep down inside that you have something valuable to offer, and time is money. I tell people all the time, time is money. I don't care if you're not the, most experienced person in your industry, your time you can't get back. So everyone else around you is making money off of the time that they're putting into whatever else they're doing. And I tell people too, God didn't call us to be broke. So yes, you can have passions, He can give you a heart to serve, but at the same time, you have a family to feed. You have to feed yourself. You have other responsibilities. Yeah. You just can't be dishing out time and not getting anything in return.
When I started, I felt like, as a new entrepreneur, I shouldn't charge what people in the industry have been charging because they have been doing it longer as entrepreneurs. And that was the worst thing that I could have done, because I had just as much experience, if not more, than they did. So it made me really hate my business, because I was charging next to nothing, because in my mind, I just want to get out there. I want to help, these entrepreneurs. But it was like the time that I put into it didn't equate to what I was getting paid. Like, it was almost like I was just making just enough to get by. And I quickly reshifted that thinking, like, okay, and I have to do something that, a lot of entrepreneurs should do. Validate yourself. Write out, if you're going to be this entrepreneur, what makes you skilled at this? And your experience is enough of a skill to teach, to transform, to help whatever it is that you're doing. It's not always about the education. Your experience, what you've been through, you can teach someone who's going through that how to get out of it.
Right.
So I would say validate yourself and put a price tag on it. You get a price that's comfortable for you, but also stretches you.
Right. And I think with that too, it's like it's all in knowing your worth. So if you know that whatever you're doing, you got it going on, right? And there's consistency in your branding and all of that good thing and all of that stuff, like that stuff costs, right? And so
yes,
even I think too, if you get people like your audience or your customers, if you get people in the mindset of, oh, she offers discounted services, once you get to the point where you feel like you're experienced enough or you have what it takes and you adjust your prices, guess what? Those people are probably they associate you with being discounted. They're not used to paying the full price or whatever. So it's going to be hard for them to accept, your,
yes.
So you probably are going to end up losing people in the long run. And that's something that I had to even tell myself, like back in the day, I was doing hair and stuff. And I'm just like, looking back on it now, I'm like, I was selling myself short. Like, just because, like, oh, I don't have the experience or whatever, or I'm trying to get my clientele up. No, I was selling myself short.
Yeah, and that's the thing with a lot of, you know, limiting beliefs. They really do make sense. Like, they're very practical. But it's, you know, really identifying, like, I always say you have to examine what it is that you're telling yourself and learn how to reframe it, question and examine everything, because a lot of it does make sense. It seems very practical, but the practical things sometimes keep us playing small. And so if we're not examining those things, then we're continuing to repeat the same thoughts, beliefs, patterns, and habits that are stopping us from getting the money that we made. So I always say reframe. So is this belief, thought true? If it's not true, what's the new belief? If it is true, how can you change your perspective on it? And then you really want to find new people or experiences that are going through, have gone through what it is that this new perspective or thought is. So for me, Oprah, she's so far removed that she was never my, like, I can do it too. But there are other women who aren't making as much that I can believe that what they're doing, I can do that too. I always tell people, look at the people in your industry, not so much as competition, but the fact that if they did it, you can too. There's enough money for all of you, because there's billions of people on earth, right?
Right.
They're just serving a small portion of it. So even if they're the industry leader, most likely they have a lot of their products or services are kind of intimidating to other people. So that's where you can kind of, you know, make your mark by not being so far above that people are intimidated. You're the girl or the guy next door, and you use them as motivation that this industry does make money, that I am looking at my pricing, I am on the right track, there is money here. And then it all just, it seems a lot more simplified and not as intimidating.
Right.
But like, that's how I looked at it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Now, I did want to take, it was another thing that you mentioned too about societies, like cultural views of what wealth looks like versus your own view of wealth, success. It's funny because, like, a lot of times I like ask people random questions. So I'll ask, like, what does success look like to you? And like, a lot of people cannot answer that question. They might, you know, ponder on it for a few seconds, and then they start naming off, you know, well, a luxury vehicle or a nice house. And it's like, if you really don't know what success looks like, and ultimately we all say, oh, I just want to be successful. I want to reach a place in my life where, you know, I'm successful. But if you ask, you can't answer that yourself. It's like, who's defining what that looks like? Are you chasing after some false reality that social media tells you, or your mom tells you, your dad, your sister, your brother? But a lot of people cannot define what that looks like in their own life. And it's kind of like, it's like scary, because it's just like, okay, you're doing X, Y, Z every single day, but you don't really know what you're going after, right? So that was crazy that you mentioned that.
It's true for wealth too, not just the size. So when people, you know, book sessions with me, they'll say, well, I just want to be wealthy. Okay, well, what does that look like? Mm-hmm. And then they're say nothing, like, I want to have a lot of money. Well, how much money?
Right.
And it's like, what are you striving for? And it's funny because I used to have wealth in my intro. And what I realized is that people are intimidated just by the word wealth. And it's like, it's just an accumulation of things. But it's fun. It's true. People are so intimidated by words. Budgeting is one, wealth, rich, manifestation, like investing, debt. They're all trigger words for people because we've had some type of emotional attachment experience with these words that the mere mention of them like sends people running.
Right.
But I've realized that instead of saying like, okay, well, how much wealth do you want to have? I started saying like earlier this year, what wealth experiences do you want to have? Because most of us know we want to travel or we want to feel some type of way. And I always say money is just a tool to help you live the life that you want, to create those wealth experiences. It's not so much that we're striving for money, it's what money brings us. And I don't think people make that connection. Like, yeah, you can have $1,000 in the bank, but if you have this ideal lifestyle of not living check to check, that $1,000 really isn't what you should be aiming for. So I would say now, like, what wealth experiences do you want to create? So, and then people are able to articulate, well, I would love to travel more, or I want to be able to put money aside for retirement, or I want to be able to have money to pay my taxes at the end of the year. But it's like I just really only added one more word at the end of that, but it changed the meaning for people. And so it kind of amazes me that, you know, when you just say wealth, because I think people like to be wealthy is this unknown, intimidating factor. Well, what does that mean? Like, do I have to get stocks, and do I need bonds, and do I need real estate, and do I need to, you know, get Bitcoin? Like, what does that mean? And because they can't define that, and they don't know what goes into wealth, I think they don't say anything. But if I said, well, what wealth experiences do you want to have? Like, what do you want money to do for you? They're like, okay, well, I want to be able to retire at this age. Well, how much do you need? It's a different conversation. But I also think that we don't research enough or dig into things enough to be able to form our own opinion. We kind of let society and those around us dictate it for us. And the problem with that is a lot of it is partial truth. Some of it's true, some of it's not. It's kind of like, you know, you tell one person something and you say, don't say anything. And then when the story gets back to you, you're like, that ain't even what happened. People mix in what they want to have. And then the story is, you know, this and that. And you're like, that's not even what happened. That's kind of how information gets back to us. I see a lot of things on social media about wealth or saving and investing. And it's like, who put this out there? Like, that is not true. But, you know, people take it as such. It's kind of like, you know, I get the people that are like, well, Dave Ramsey says, and I'm like, right, but do you know why he says that?
I'll be right back after this message. Today's episode was brought to you by Anchor, my podcast host. I chose Anchor to host my podcast for several reasons. Number one, it's free. 2, the convenience. They have several creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. They even distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on many different platforms such as Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can make money from podcasting. Yes, you can make money with no minimum listenership. If you're interested in starting a podcast today, everything you need to know, you can learn at anchor.fm to get started. Thank you.
Right. They're like, no. I'm like, the whole purpose in his method is if you use cash, he's helping you build discipline. Like, that's what he's helping you do. He's helping you build discipline and stay within your means. That's his whole methodology.
Right.
But I'll find other people and they'll be like, well, you need credit and credit is king. And I'm like, right. But do you understand why?
Right.
And so people don't understand the why. They're just like, you have to have cash. And I'm like, that's not all the way true. But then you have people, you have to have credit. And I'm like, that's not all the way true. I'm like, it's kind of a myth. You need credit until you have to pay it back. Then what do you need? Cash. Right. You can have cash, but you'll need a good credit score if you want to buy a house or something that needs credit. So it's like, there is no one size fits all when it comes to money. You have to have your own values and know what you are trying to do financially. And then you take the strategies that are all out there and then apply it to you. But I think people apply it, and then when it don't work, they're like, well, that doesn't work. It does. You just didn't customize it to your situation. You just expected, this to work. Like, I love the ones on social media. They're like, get out of debt in 2 months. And they're like, well, you can do it. I'm like, yeah, but did you read all of the article that says she let go of her apartment, she sold her car, she moved back in with her parents, she worked 2 jobs, she did freelance work, she was a photographer on the side, she had another side hustle. Like, did you read all of that? And they're like, no. And I'm like, right, you can do it, but you got to make sure that what they did, you can apply to you for it to work. So I don't think we kind of research and kind of figure out what works for us all the time. And I think that's kind of sometimes the problem when it comes to money. We expect, it to solve itself. It's like, well, baby, that debt not going away unless you pay on it. It's not. The savings account won't grow unless you put money into it. So it's just researching and, trying to figure out what your values are and how to apply that strategy for your life. Because everybody's life, income, situation is all different. So it's about finding what works for you.
Absolutely. I agree. I actually listen to Dave Ramsey, his podcast just about every day. And sometimes I'll encounter other people who, we'll get on the topic of Dave Ramsey. And some people are, like, oh, I believe in what he says. Some people are like, oh, I'm opposed to what he say, and here's why. And a lot of times people will tell me, well, I don't necessarily agree with him saying that, cut up the credit cards. And I tell them, I'm like, his whole premise is to help people who are trying to get on track in their finances, right? People who have ruined their credit, people who have bad associate or bad relationship with money. So yes, he's telling them to cut up your credit cards. But again, you have to do your research. A lot of the people like that call into his podcast and they'll say, oh, my wife and I, we paid off $86,000 in debt. And people just see the highlight reel, but they probably don't listen to the whole.
Yes.
So like you said, they're selling their homes, they're selling their car, they're using public transportation, they're giving things up so that they can get on track. And so, yes, they're utilizing his system, but people don't understand that there are other things, like everyone's situation is different. So I'm so glad that you said that.
Yeah, and he has a very specific market. His market isn't for everybody, but this is the reason why his cash methods work, because you're not accumulating any more debt. You're systematically building that discipline to know this is how much I can spend because this is how much I can have. Right. And people, they look at all of the strategies and they think like, okay, well, I just now need to apply that. No, you need to understand why he was saying that so that you can make an informed decision. And I think that's one of the, like I said, it goes back to research. We get bits and pieces of it. We don't know the whole story. Because I like his method because I understand his methodology. Right. Is it something that would benefit my life? No, but I'm not in that situation.
Right.
Do I think that you need credit? I do. But that, you know what I'm saying? So I love there's this bumper sticker that says like Dave Ramsey made me get this van, and it's like an older car. But I'm like, I get his methodology. Like he's telling you, live within your means. And I think if a lot of people kind of understood what he was trying to say, instead of just tearing down like why he was saying it just because he's so very pro cash, they would have a better understanding of it. He's not saying that credit is like the devil. He's just saying to get back on track, these are the steps that you need to do. But people who sell credit or who sell credit repair are going to tell you like repair your credit, and the credit card industry is going to tell you like, okay, well, you can have credit cards and here's this upper limit. And, people who approve credit is saying like, you can get $25,000 on your credit. So it's understanding whose narrative it is you're listening to and why they are saying that. That'll help you a lot, because I do believe it's a mixture, but that's just my personal opinion. I like living in my house, so I don't want to not have, I would be scared to think about if I had to pay for cash where I would be living in my financial journey. I'm okay with a mortgage, but I also think that people should not kind of sidetrack, but I think people should kind of make more informed decisions on things and not kind of run with them. Like we were talking about, like, credit isn't bad. I think the way we use credit and misuse it is bad. But right. Credit itself isn't bad. It's just you leveraging someone else's funds. Right. Debt in itself isn't good or bad. It's just the way we use it. Just like cash isn't good or bad. You can have all of, your whole paycheck and then spend it all within, a weekend, and then you would be thinking like working is terrible and I can never get ahead from this job. It's like, no, the job nor the money were the issues. It was the behavior and the spending patterns that you had. I get people that say, I got all of this student loan debt. I'm never gonna, get out of it. I shouldn't have never went to school. And I have to reframe them like, okay, well, wait a minute. So if you didn't go to school, you're saying you wouldn't have this loan. I'm like, but would you live in the same house? Would you have the same job? And then they're like, no. I'm like, right. So let's reframe this. Student loans allowed you the opportunity to leverage their money while you went to school. And now it is now your responsibility to pay them back. That's all it is. Like, I get their other emotional attachments, but let's talk about facts. That's the fact. Like, you said you was going to pay this money back at X amount of time. So now that you realize, like, you may not like that degree or whatever, that had nothing to do with the loan. So it's kind of like, working through those things. Like, do I use my credit card? Yes, I do. But I also make informed decisions. So before I swipe, I'm like, is whatever I'm purchasing, is this something that I'm okay with in paying back in a month or 2 months? If it is, I buy it because I understand I'm just leveraging this money for this amount of time. I know when I'm paying it back. And if it's not something that I'm like, I don't want to pay this back, in 2 months or 1 month, I don't buy it. And I just go about my business. But, we put so much emphasis on when credit is bad and cash is bad and debt is bad. And, it's like, okay, let's take a lot of the emotional connotations off of these words. Because people have that reaction with budgeting. They're like, budgets are bad. I'm like, what budgets do to you?
Right.
But they're like, it's restricting and it's telling me where my money is going. I'm like, yeah, it's trying to tell you where your money is going because you don't know where it's going right now. Like, budgeting isn't bad.
Right.
It did nothing to you. So I just think, sometimes we let words kind of trigger us, and we should look at, why we feel that uncomfortableness with the word and kind of get to the bottom of that.
Definitely. I agree. So as you were saying, all of that, I kind of found like a common theme. Like it all boils down to our relationship with money, right? So our relationship with money is going to determine whether or not we deem credit to be a good thing or we deem it as something that we can leverage. Our relationship with money will determine whether or not we're on board with a budget or aren't on board with a budget. But what ideally, what should our relationship with money look like?
So, I think it's where you don't feel uncomfortable, where you don't have anxiety about talking about it, thinking about it, doing anything with it, where you are at a place where you are comfortable making it, creating it, saving, spending, investing it, managing it. Like when you're at a place where you are just comfortable with money, I think that's the ideal relationship. And you don't have to get comfortable with all of them at once. Figure out what your first goal is. If you're an entrepreneur, your first goal needs to be you getting very, very comfortable making money. That should be your only goal in your business. And, as someone in the financial industry, yes, I'm telling you to forego managing it for a second, but get really comfortable making it, because sometimes we have these limits that we only believe we can make X amount of dollars. Right. And until you push past that limit of where you think you can go, it's going to be very hard, because you'll keep tapping at it. A lot of people say, like, I can never get over this amount. It's because you don't believe you can get over that amount. But the moment you believe that you can get over that amount, all of the money that you want will come. And then you'll hit another level where it's kind of like, I don't really know. I'm not really sure if I can make that. And then you do the work again. And then you focus on managing the money. And then you get to, okay, well, I tell my clients, set up a money meeting. This is 15, 20 minutes of you going through your accounting system to see how much money you made, what you spent that money on, and, look at your goals, look at your projections. It doesn't have to be hard, but it just has to be done. And then I think if, on the personal side, maybe focus on, either saving money, and understanding like what you're saving for. For me, I'm saving for a freedom fund. And a freedom fund is just I don't want to work when I'm older. And so, yes, I have a 401k and I have investments, but I want the comfort of having money in a checking account, a nice chunk of change. And, you get some people that say, if you have more than X amount of dollars in your savings account, it could be making more money investing. And that's true. But for me and my level of comfort, this is what I choose. Right. And so it's like, okay, well, if you're saving and once you're comfortable with that, maybe start looking at how you can knock some of that debt down. Or getting comfortable, maybe it's time for you to learn how to invest, or maybe you want to do real estate, so it's understanding that you don't have to do all of it at once. This is a lifelong journey, but you do have to do something. Saying I have all of these financial goals is great, but if you don't have any task or action behind them, then all you're doing is saying something. You're not implementing anything, and that's where the practical work comes in at.
Wow.
So I hope that answered it.
It did. So how do you help entrepreneurs?
So I help entrepreneurs kind of figure out I do two things. So there's the practical side, but there's also the mindset mind. So I call it the mindset and the mechanics. So a lot of people already understand the strategy of, okay, I need to manage money, I need to save, invest, or, pay down my debt. We all understand that. But what we don't understand is why we don't do those things, or why is it so hard for me to do this? Why can I not feel comfortable around money? I always say, like, PayPal is, as entrepreneurs, you see that notification going off, going off, going off, going off. And it gives you this illusion that you're making money, but entrepreneurs don't realize that they're spending money as soon as they make it, because the notification says you've made money. And then you go buy something. And then they're like, well, I don't know where my money goes. And I'm like, first of all, turn the notification off, because it is. I'm like, please turn it off. And it's great for a boost of, this is what you made. But I'm like, look at that. If you want to know how much you made on a daily basis, have a daily money meeting. Look at what you made at one time. But get out of the habit of looking at it and then spending it, because your mind says, hey, you've made money. But then if you're out or you see something that you want, in your mind, it says, well, I have the money for that. And so you spend it. And then, you get into the habit of, you went from check to check to now client to client or PayPal to PayPal. And so I help entrepreneurs really get their mindset correct and then get the right strategy or mechanic behind it, because they know what to do. They don't know how, and making it something that's for them. Money isn't one size fit all. You have different needs. I have different needs. What works for me may not work for you. And so I help them customize their goals and come up with a plan that's for them. Because ultimately, we can have all of the things that we want. We just got to kind of shut that fear and that doubt and those negative thoughts that when we first get the thought that says, no, you can't have the thought, shut that down. I have a lot of entrepreneurs that say, I have this great idea. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, when are you implementing? And they're like, no, and this and this. And I'm like, you probably just taught yourself out of like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Because we get that thought that says like, who are you to do it? Are you sure? No one's ever done this. What if they don't buy? What if, you don't charge enough? What if you charge too much? What are they going to say? What if you lose your audience? No one's going to buy that. We get all of these things within, a minute of us having this idea. And then we kind of, because they all sound practical, they all sound like truth, we say, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't do that. But that's the thing with beliefs. They oftentimes make sense. And so it's really identifying, going through all of those things. Like, is this true? No. Okay, well, what's the new belief? Well, this is the new belief. Okay, well, what's the new experience behind it? And really reframing all of those thoughts. So that's what I do. I help you really understand what blocks do you have about money and how we can shift those, and then what goals you have, and so that you can now take the new mindset that you have and really get those goals accomplished. Because if I hear people saying that, the same goals that they had this year are the same goals from last year, that means you didn't make any progress. And so the progress stopped because of the thoughts and the beliefs that you couldn't do it, you couldn't have it, or you didn't feel worthy of. So let's eliminate that part first, and now reshift those goals and knock those out.
Right. I love that. When you said check to client, that is like, it's funny, but if you think about it, I think sometimes who are in a rush, like let's say if someone is in a rush to leave corporate America, right? But they haven't, like you said, it's mechanics versus mindset. They haven't really adapted the mindset of what it takes to be an entrepreneur, especially if they're just walking away from corporate America altogether, starting this new venture. If they haven't like shifted their mindset to be more responsible, and maybe when they were working in corporate America, they were living paycheck to paycheck out of impulsive, their impulsive spending habits, and they don't correct that. And they just think that once they have their own business going, it'll be different, blah, blah, blah. And then they find themselves client to client. And it's like, well, I didn't know where my money was going when I was working for someone else. Now that I'm working for myself, I don't know where my money is going. So I actually see that a lot, and I hear that a lot. And it's just like, just because you change your method of money or how you're making your money, it's not going to just magically change overnight. And you're going to become this, responsible person, and a person that's going to, track their finances. accordingly, like you said, you have to have those money meetings. If you're gonna if you're gonna look for those notifications daily, you need to have a meeting with yourself daily too, so that you can make sure you're staying focused and you're on track to whatever it is that you're trying to obtain.
Yeah, I think the problem is, you know, when you get more money, we spend more money. And so I have a lot of clients who went from, you know, making 50, 60,000 in their, you know, 9 to 5 to now that they're entrepreneurs. Some of them are part-time, some of them are full-time. You know, it's a culture shock. They're like, well, I have to pay taxes quarterly? Yes. You don't, and I have to break it down. Like when you were an employee, you got excess taken out of your check every time you got paid. So you didn't have to worry about it. And so now all of your money is tax-free. So yes, you should be putting money aside. And then they're like, well, you know, I don't want to do that. And I'm like, and that's your choice. As your advisor, this is what I advise. But it's, you know, helping them get out of that. And I'm like, you're going to pay taxes either way. You can pay it quarterly on your own, or you can pay it at the end of the year and have to come up with it. The IRS is going to get their money regardless. Yes, they do. Do it the way that, you know, more comfortable. But, you know, the problem is we get this extra money and we spend it because we feel like it's extra, but it's like, it's not extra. It's just what you were earning. And so when you increased your income, you increased your spending. So they're like, well, I don't know where it went. You spent it. That's where it went. It's like the income goes up proportional to the expenses. And it's like, if you aren't careful, you'll be making more money and still financially, you know, in terms of your savings and your debt being in the same position, because you haven't taken into account, like, now I make X amount of dollars. Do I need to reevaluate, you know, my financial position? We just want to spend because we're making, you know, more. But it's like, that's why you ultimately didn't grow. I would tell my clients, give your money purpose. Like, you need to understand when you make this, where is it going before you make it? Because once you get it, your first thought is to spend it. So kind of know where it's going. That's why I really stress having money meetings at least once a week, so that you can identify, like, how much you made for the week. Do you need to pay yourself, or do you need to do a withdrawal? Or, you know, can you put the extra towards your debt? Can you put it towards your savings? Is it time for you to start, you know, investing? Like, whatever that is, you have to have an eye on your money, because if not, then you'll keep saying, like, I don't know where it went. And that'd be an honest statement.
Right. Wow. So how can our listeners connect with you via social media, and what services you have to offer them?
So I am Takisha Artis on all social media. So Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and my website is Takisha Series. So I am coming out with a lot of digital products, because I think sometimes we don't want to talk about money in a group. We want to kind of stay hush-hush about our financial situation. And so while I realize that, I also want to continue to have a platform where you are supported on whatever level you are, because the more you talk about it, and when I say talk about it, I'm not saying you got to be like, okay, well, I made $10,000 today, or I made $1,000, or I made nothing today. But talk about it in the sense that you're open to just acknowledging that you made money or you didn't make money, having those conversations with other women. It elevates your level of comfort. And so it shouldn't be an intimidating or guilt or embarrassment, but just to know what's possible, because I feel like we don't talk about it at all. And so I want to have a community where we talk about it without all of the negative connotations or feeling like you aren't enough because of money. Because when you talk about it with others of like mind, it lets you know that, number one, you are amongst friends and you have that support that sometimes you don't have in your real environment.
Right.
Because I know that sometimes is a problem too. Like, people don't understand why I can't go on vacation, I'm saving, or I'm building a business, so I don't have time for this. So I've built this community where we're talking about money has to be okay. Because that's how change happens. If we continue to keep silent about it, we can't teach our daughters or our sons that you can be a millionaire by the time you're my age, or you don't have to go down the financial road that I have, or, we have to start talking about it more openly, even if dollar amounts aren't involved.
Right. I love that. I love the whole idea of community. And it is, I feel like a lot of people are, they know that money is important. They know that talking about it is important, but for whatever reason, like whatever their personal background or even their relationship with money up until this point, that's kind of like a lot of people shy away from like talking about it, particularly with others, because it could be out of fear of maybe I'm not as far along as I think I am. I'm afraid of, someone else being further ahead than me. But like you said earlier, it's all about our own individual like pathways, right? So the whole idea of community.
Yeah. It's definitely needed.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Well, thank you. Speaking of community, thank you so much for sharing this, like everything, all this good stuff with the Yellow Room community today. I know that there's definitely a fraction of my audience who are aspiring entrepreneurs, or either they're current entrepreneurs. And I know for most of them, they're just starting out on their journey. So I definitely think that they're appreciative of everything that you've said, and probably very interested in the services you offer. So again, you all, for all of you all who follow me on Instagram and are part of my Facebook group, I will be linking all of her information on how you can follow up with her about her services. And if you just want to stay up to date with her in life in general, I'll be providing all of that information on my social media platforms. But Takisha, thank you so much for being a part of the Money Moves series. God bless you. I speak blessings and favor over everything that you have going. And again, I'm just very appreciative of you saying yes to be a part.
Thank you for having me. This was great. I love conversations like this. So thank you for having me. And let me know if you need anything else.
Thank you. I definitely will. I'll be right back after this message. Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode. If you are new here, please consider subscribing on whatever platform you're listening in on today. Leave me a rating, leave me a review, comment, whatever you feel that you want to do. If you already consider yourself a part of the Yellow Room family, please consider making a small monthly donation to sustain and contribute to my growing platform. No amount is too small. Donations can be made at anchor.fm/theyellowroom/support. If you are unable to, I still love you just the same. You can still support me by listening, sharing, and providing feedback. I thank you all so much, and I appreciate your continued listenership. Thank you.